So good afternoon and welcome. I'm Danuta Yatetsky, Dean of Libraries, and I want to thank you for joining us today for the second of three introductory webinars covering the basics of altmetrics and the tools and data the Altmetric Explorer offers. The Drexel Libraries has licensed access to the Altmetric Explorer tool for the next several months as part of our efforts to improve our systems that globally recognize Drexel's research and researchers. We're encouraged to see so many of you with us today. So gathering reliable data on the broader engagement and reach of our research can be challenging and time-consuming. Altmetric Explorer is one of the tools we're examining and whether to more fully integrate it into the Drexel Research Portal that we've already created. We're excited to hear your reactions to the analytic tools and data that Altmetric offers. So before we get started, I wanted to run through a few housekeeping items. First, please stay muted during the session. We'll save time for questions and comments at the end. And secondly, we are recording this session, and so you will receive a link to the video later in the week, so you can revisit the webinar and all its details at your convenience. So with that, let me turn the Zoom controls over to our guest presenter today, Carola Blackwood, who's the one of the project specialists for Altmetrics. So thank you again for joining us, Carola, and I turn it over to you.
Thank you so very much, Danuta. I am going to do a quick PowerPoint to start, and then we'll go right into the product live. So first, I'll do a quick explanation of Altmetrics and Altmetric. Then I'll do a demo of the Altmetric Explorer and how it can be used by the research office for these possible use cases. And I won't have time to go into all of them, but I'll address a couple of them. And then there'll be time for questions as well. So Altmetrics, what are they? The definition that we use is that they capture how people are sharing and talking about research online. And these alternative metrics provide evidence of engagement with various audiences and their potential impact. That's really a big one. They're complementary to bibliometrics, the citation-based metrics that we're all used to, but they do not replace them. That's the big thing. They don't replace them. They just provide a different perspective to bibliometrics. And we have found that most of the people that talk about research don't actually publish or do the research themselves, but they do talk about the research. And our goal is to uncover who those people are and what it is that they're saying. And those people could be the general public, it could be government and policymakers, advocacy, nonprofit groups, practitioners, just various interested parties that care about different research, and then they make comments about them in the different areas that we track. So some of the terminology that you've heard in past trainings, and that I'll just emphasize here again, because you'll hear me talking about that: output, source, and mentions. So the output is that piece of research, generally a journal article, but it could be a book or a book chapter as well. The sources, where that research is shared, whether it's on one of the social media platforms that we track, or whether it's in a news outlet. And then the mention is that actual reference to a piece of research or a share, and we'll see more of that. So in order for us to track research, we need a research output that has a persistent identifier that's mentioned in a source that we track. And of course, we don't track the entire internet. There's certain sources that we do track, like policy documents and faculty opinions, news blogs, etc. We have specific numbers for you if you're interested in those, and I can also share you how you can find what particular blogs that we're tracking, what particular policy documents that we have, etc. But these are the sources that we track, and then there's always that score that's associated with a particular piece of research, and we don't it's not a number that adds up. So there's X number of times something is talked about. There's an algorithm that that adds up to a particular score, and the numbers that you see here on the right, it'll be a combination of a news, and being part of a news article is going to give you a higher score than if it's mentioned in a tweet, for example. So it's everything has a combination of scores, and you can see about the attention score. Whenever you get to this details page, there'll be information about the attention score and how a score and how we arrive at a particular score. And the important really is the context, what people are saying, more than just this has a big number, what does it mean? So you really want to look at what people are saying about a particular piece of research. What is the outlet where people are discussing it? How important is it to you? So context is really important. And that's just a little bit of the background before we go into the live demo. And so let me take you into the demo, and I would imagine you can still see this, right? Yes, that I'm still sharing my screen. Okay, beautiful. So when we go into, actually, I'm going to view, and I'm going to take some of these things off so we have more of a view. Okay, here we go. So when you're looking at research at Drexel, there's a couple of different ways that we can look at this. We can look at either research that's just for your organization, we can look at research that's at my institution, or we can look at all research that Altmetric tracks, and then sort of we can pull data out of that. So let me show you what we're looking at right now. Here in the edit search button, you have the option of looking at my institution only. And when we do that, and I'm going to take this biomedical out. So when we look at my institution only, we're giving you a view of all the information that you're telling us to track, which we get from right over here. And then this is all the research that we're tracking that's associated with Drexel University and the type of attention that research has gotten. So you can see that we're tracking 58,000 unique pieces of research. And of those 58,000, 19,000 of this research has received attention. And then the total attention, so this could be tweets and retweets, or posts, X posts and X reposts, and policy mentions and news and blogs and all that will add up to 313,000 different types of attention. So that's one way you can look at all the different attention that is affiliated with Drexel. And you can see very quickly that as far as impact is concerned, and sort of looking at Drexel as an organization, impact is easily measured when you're looking at policy and patents. That's kind of an important area. So this is in purple, and we can hover over the little purple here at the attention breakdown, and then you can see that there's over 5,000 policy mentions and 17,000 different patents where research that's affiliated with Drexel has been mentioned. So you can drill down into that really quickly, or you can look at a variety of other different things. So on this main overview page here, you have the attention breakdown. You can also see the research overall that's had the highest scores. And every time you see a little check mark, that means that this is research that's verified, that is related to Drexel. And you can see who has paid the most attention to Drexel. Mortar Pestle USA, they have, this particular X user has made 1,468 mentions of 1,468 mentions of research related to Drexel. Then the WHO has, there's a lot of policy source mentions of Drexel research. And so you can look at all these different affiliations. If you want to see who who has done a lot of collaboration with. So there's obviously this is the research that's all affiliated with Drexel, but also Harvard has a lot of affiliation with your research, as well as the University of Pennsylvania. So this is kind of an overview, all these different little subject areas and mentions and attention by region. So all these different all these different tabs at the top are represented with the top scores here that you can look at. And I'll let you dig into that further, but I want to just show you where the valuable sort of tidbits are that might be important to you. So again, I looked at my institution only, and so it filtered out everyone else that we may not be interested in. So if I clear that, it takes me back to the full Altmetric database, and then you're looking at 45 million different pieces of research, and that's where you would want to be if you're comparing yourself to other institutions. If you wanted doing benchmarking or something along those lines, you'd always want to be in this big full total outputs tract. But the other area that we have that's really helpful is this My Institution right here. So if we click on that, this information this is what you have provided us with to see the different authors that are affiliated with Drexel, and then also various departments. So this is the authors. You can scroll through these authors in alphabetical order. If you know that you're looking for someone, perhaps you're looking at Scott Myers-Hogg and what research you might have wanted to see what he's up to, or Charles Nathan Haas, for example, in the College of Engineering. He's done a lot of different research that we've been able to track. So you can see all the results related to this particular author right here under View Results. You click on that, and it shows you all the research that he has co-authored or authored, and the altmetric score that is related to that result, and it's still loading, so it'll just take a moment. And there are 325 different research outputs that he's been involved with, and 150 of those have had results. Let me reload this here, see that we get, don't know why this one is not loading. But you can sort this author's results in different ways as well. So this is this research outputs tab right here. But if you want to see which of his research has resulted in policy documents, you can click on, I want to sort it by policy documents. So then you can see here, okay, within this subgroup of Charles Nathan Haas's research, these are the ones that have policy documents. And if you want to then see, okay, let's open one of these up and give you a look at the Altmetrics detail page. So if you want to see which particular policy documents he might be associated with, you can just click on this tab for policy documents, and it shows you all the different policy documents that are citing this author's work. So if you want to show the relevance and the value of the research that has come out of Drexel that has to do with research associated with this particular author, this is a very easy way to show piece of research by research of how it's affected these different policy documents. And if you want to see a listing, for example, of policy documents that are affiliated with a particular author, we have this export tab right here. So you can save any of these research queries, but we have this export tab, which would give you the policy sources in a CSV. And I've done that already right up here, and it would show you that in this particular case, I used a different author, but it would show you that there's what the policy source is, the name of the source, the country, and the number of mentions that this would have. So I've taken various different queries that I've done, and I have I've exported them and shown you the different types of CSVs that I would get for these. So for example, just the regular, if I did it at the research outputs level, like at this level here, you would get, let's see, research outputs. So you would get this really rich file of, you get the output score, the title of the particular article, the journal it was published in, the ISSN, the authors at my institution, the different departments that they're affiliated with. And these departments come from your department view. When we're out here, it comes from this view right here. So this is where we would have gathered that information affiliated with the research. And then we also get the OA status, whether it's open access, true or not, the type of OA, the different subject areas assigned, the field of research. Also, if you're tracking sustainable development goals from the United Nations, you can find that information right here. We have good health, peace and justice, zero hunger. So that's information that's captured. Also, different grid affiliations. So if you want to see who are you partnering with in this particular, for this particular research, we can provide that information, Australian National University, Brookings Institute, etc. Who funded research, what the publication date was. So there's all kinds of really rich data that we provide in every export when you're doing research. And as well, we tell you right here, what type of mentions have they had. So they've had news mentions for this particular piece of research. There's blog mentions, policy mentions. And if you're interested in patents, which one of these have patents? So all this information, all the way through to a AV, so I don't know, what is that, 50 some odd pieces of information is available for every single output. So that should be real helpful for you to have, and that's simply done by exporting. Let me go back to where I was. We'll just pick one of these here. We'll review the results. So when you're in the research outputs, just by exporting, depending on what query you did, you'll get all that type of information in your export. So that's something that you might be interested in. So at this point, we are looking at all the research outputs from Drexel in the department, the Academy of Natural Sciences at Drexel University. So whatever way that we pick a filter, pick a different department, it's always going to be reflected in our different search queries. And then you can export, you can adjust the query however you want to do that. So for example, here, the College of Medicine has done a lot of research. And if there's a little arrow here, you can further filter that. So if you want to see, okay, anesthesiology there's 84 pieces of research that we're tracking. Biochem and molecular has 523. And let's see what else has a good amount. So there's quite a bit here in neurology, neurobiology, and anatomy. So if we want to see those results, we click on view results. So now our query has changed. I want to see all the research outputs in the Department of Neurobiology and Anatomy at Drexel. Now, you can further limit this by clicking here on edit the results or edit your search by limiting by publication date, for example. If you only want to see things that have been published perhaps since 2021, and I guess I should put in, we'll say January 1st, 2021 forward. Then we don't have to enter any other dates here, and we can run our search. So now it's telling us this is what's been published in neurobiology and anatomy since 2021. And there are 184 pieces of research that we're tracking, and of those, 133 have mentions. So that gives you a much narrower view of the research, but it allows you to really zoom in on what you might want to look for. And again, here, if you want to see, okay, now I want to have this sorted by policy documents, well, you can do that again. You can click on policy documents and see, okay, very interesting. The research since 2021 in neurobiology does not have any policy documents. I wonder if any of it does. So let me go back and edit the search and take out this filter. And run the search again. Okay, so now there are policy documents for some of the earlier research, just not the research since 2021. So you can play with all those different parameters and take a look. Also, you have different views. Let's view this by how long has it been since something has been mentioned? So I want to see, has any of this research has had any of it had mentions in the past month? So this is the research that's been talked about in neurobiology and anatomy in the last month. So through here, these have been mentioned in the last month. So it might be interesting to see, okay, this is from April 2012. This is from 2010. Why are people talking about these older ones again? So that might be kind of interesting to take a look at. All right, let's see what this is. Okay, so it's been in a Wikipedia page. It's been cited in a Wikipedia page, and we track 34 different language Wikipedia pages. And so we can take a look at this here and say, okay, so this has been updated in the Japanese. It's been cited in the Japanese version of Wikipedia in this kinesin family member 11. It's a type of protein, I guess, in the Japanese Wikipedia. So there you go. So that's, I mean, that's who knew? So that's kind of an interesting one. So you can dig into any of this type of research. So whatever you want to feature and say, okay, what are we up to in this area, or where have we had attention lately? So let's look at the bigger picture and see where are people talking about us, and when did they talk about us recently? So let's edit our search again, and let's go to my institution only. And then we don't want anything. Let's take the neurobiology out again. And let's run our search. So this is, again, we're just looking at, we'll go back to the highlights, just our research, the Drexel University research. And let's take a look at the timeline of research. And we can see, when have people been talking about us? What is the most recent thing they've said about our research? Is there anything that we ought to highlight? Anything that we can perhaps do press releases about, anything along those lines. So if we're looking at, so there's mentions all the way down to, there's patent mentions going all the way back here, but really where the attention gets more interesting is in this area. So we can pull this all the way, maybe we want to go to, so where does it get interesting? So maybe let's take it like right here, for example. And then we want to, maybe we only want to see policy. So we can click on the policy, the little policy tab here. And then all of these mentions are now just related to policy. And if you want to add policy and perhaps patents, you click the command button on a Mac. I guess it's control on a PC. And now you're seeing on the bottom, you have you have both the patent mentions in red and the policy mentions in purple. And if you want to see, okay, so what were they talking about here? The policy mentions in August 2023. So it is taking me here into August of 2023, looking at the policy and patent mentions, and it took me right to this tab, to the mentions tab, and it will show you what particular patents they were talking about and why they were citing this particular research. So this was in a patent citation from 2023, and it cited an article that was published in the year 2008. So that's quite interesting. And this would have been, and you can take a look at that research and say, okay, if these are your authors, I would imagine that they are, because we're looking at your particular research. So you can you can look at further information. There's also then the patent citation here. And we link you to the patent drawn article in Dimensions. So you can really take a good look at that and further information on any of this particular data. And then finally, you can, on any of this research that you have found, you can save this, you can save any of these searches, and then they will show up here under saved searches. And this is where you can rerun searches, and every time so any of this is dynamic. So right now I had done a search with research outputs sorted by mentions in the past days. So every time I run that, and I can get myself an update on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis, it will always be dynamic, and it'll show me whatever is, if something new has happened, it'll show that. It's not going to be a static search. But we also have the ability to create these shared reports. And these are reports that you can share with others at the organization. So this is what it would look like, a report for Drexel research in biomedical and clinical sciences, for example. And this report will update as well. So you can edit this report, and you can, these categories can be deleted or added back in, but you can't add any additional ones. So this is not a product that you can, okay, I want to import perhaps from Voss Viewer or something along those lines. So this is kind of a standard for a shared report, but you can, if you don't find any of these helpful, like if this attention over time is not helpful, you can just delete it. Or you can also, well, I only want to see perhaps the policy mentions perhaps in the previous calendar year. And then you would see what policy mentions were shown up, if that's a focus that you want to have. And then we have the top 5 research outputs in the subject area in biomedical and clinical science. But we also can say, okay, we don't want just the top 5. We actually want, you can have up to the top 20. So now you'll see the top 20 research outputs, and you can always link to these. So even if someone doesn't go into the Explorer themselves, they can link to these, and it will take them to this particular page, where they can click on Access Altmetric Explorer, and they can then go into the product itself. And I think that's kind of what I had. Are there any questions for me? There's a lot of information. There's a lot of different data that you can pull out of the Explorer, and a lot of different, and the CSVs are very, very helpful for that. But we have a lot of other training materials that can help you on our help pages. So when you are in the Explorer, let me go back here. You've always got help right here, and that takes you to very different questions that you might have, like how are the outputs scored? How is the score calculated? Any of those kind of things, all these FAQs. And then also, if you have any questions, you can always contact the support department, and they reach right back out at you and answer your questions, in addition to contacting, of course, the engagement team as well.
There are some questions in chat. Do you want me to read them out loud, Carola, and then you can?
Yeah, that would be great. That would be great, and I'll go in and answer them by showing whatever it is that I can show.
Great. So it's a three-part question from the one person. So first, how is this different from either SciVal or academic analytics?
That's a great question for the sales department, and I'm not in the sales department. That is something that I am not the best one to answer that question, because I don't.
If I can just interject here in part of the answer to that, and there actually are reviews that show the differences, which we could probably pull up. A few years ago, we gave some of these, but I think one of the things that, if you could make a mention, Carola, what's the source of your data? And you a couple of times mentioned that what we gave you. So what the curation of information about Drexel is very different than what the SciVal and academics are using, and that is one thing you might want to make a mention of. If you go to the earlier recording of our first session, I think that was a little bit clarified. One of the unique things here is we curate the data about Drexel. These other products don't have the ability to do that as well.
Yeah, thank you, Danuta. So what we've uploaded here into my institution is data that we've received from you, and actually it was uploaded through what is the product from Ex Libris?
Explorer.
Explorer, yes. So this data comes from Explorer, and it provides a way that you can have a filter that only refers to your particular research, and so it allows you to search within your own instance. And this really made it simple also to have this my institution view that we looked at up here, where it is only referring to my institution view rather than the whole Altmetric database. Another way that you can do that sort of searching is you can go and let's see, you can type in Drexel here, and you can enter Drexel University and run a search going by Drexel, but we might miss research if the author is not providing the correct affiliations in the metadata that we get. So the best way for us to be able to affiliate research with you is through information that you're providing for us, so we can double check all those things. The source of our data is, and we get this data from Dimensions, and they get it from Crossref, and we also track a lot of different blogs. We get the patent data from IFI Claims. We have a huge variety of different sources that we ingest data from on a daily basis. So we have a API set up with X. We have which is kind of constantly changing of how we get our data. We track about 300,000 different public-facing Facebook pages. We have policy sources that we scrape. Every single policy has to have its own unique scraper, because there's no common way that we could gather the data. So we set up a scraper for each policy source individually. There's over 100,000 different blogs that we track. So if there are particular blogs that you feel that we should be tracking, we would be very happy to, if you want to send that to us, we would add that to the list, and also web pages. If there's specific pages that you want us to track, we can do that. So that's where our data comes from. And for real specifics on that, of where our data comes from, this little question mark here has all kinds of links of real specific sites, specific places, that gives you a good picture of where we're curating this information that puts together the Altmetric Explorer. And what we do is these different sites that we're tracking, we're looking for DOIs, we're looking for those unique identifiers, and then we're looking for the attention that is paid where they're being mentioned. So a media monitoring service perhaps would give you information about an institution in general, but they're not tracking particular research. So if somebody talks about you, maybe there's a story about Drexel and the type of, and maybe there's a change in leadership, whatever it might be, that's not the kind of information we would pick up unless it's related to research. So we only track things that are related to research, that are related to Drexel. And as long as as long as we have metadata that will link that research to you, and we can make that connection, then it'll show up as a mention in the Altmetric Explorer. Does that explain that? Danuta, you're on mute.
I'm sorry. I'm seeing that we're really running out of time, but I think you have two very similar questions that go to another piece of this, and we can certainly do some looking and provide comparisons of the other products. But I think you got the difference too. You're dealing with mentions in the media, not so much as I think what mostly, Sujal, you've been looking at SciVal and academic analytics is more the bibliometrics, which is about the research rankings in a slightly different way. But both he and Britt ask a similar question. Maybe.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I see that. So yes, there is an API. We do have APIs, so that's something that and I can have Patty, who is your I guess who is your account manager? That's Lauren. So Lauren would need to discuss the API with you. So Lauren API. And yes, we do have that available. And the best way to benchmark engagement with your outputs against engagement with outputs of your peers. So the best way that I would suggest you do that, and I just did a session for UNC Chapel Hill on peers, is the APIs is the best way really to pull that data out, and then you can populate whatever way that you use your APIs. But what you can do is, if you are in the if you're in the full Altmetric database, then under affiliation, who would you consider a peer? Who would be a peer institution for you? Well, let's pretend it's UNC Chapel Hill. Let's see. University. Let's just pretend it's UNC at Charlotte. So you would want to put in whoever you consider your peer institution, and then let's say you're comparing, you want to see what are they doing in biochemistry, or what are they doing in engineering, and then you would want to put in like a subject, a field of research classification, for example, engineering. You just type in engineering, and then it breaks down into all sorts of different engineering. But if we just do engineering here, and you want to run a search, then you can get what they're doing at UNC Charlotte in engineering. And then you can export that and then run a comparison with what other institutions are doing. The problem by putting all of them in one CSV is, unless you're really good with Excel and you're going to have all the little semicolons separating it. And if you're really good at pulling that apart, you can do a variety of institutions here, UNC Charlotte and whoever else your peers might be, but you're going to get that research all intermingled unless you just want to see overall how they compare. But what I would suggest is doing it individually, or the API is really the best way to do it. And if there are any other questions, Patty Smith is now the person assigned to your account. We've had a lot of different changes, but I'll have her make sure she addresses some of these things when she does the training next week. But that's going to be
send Stacey or I the questions, and this is sort of we're really now not trying to get all the actual answers that will help us in it, but to see how this tool could be useful.
Oh, for sure.
Trying to relate it. So next week says we'll have some overlap, but if I'm not mistaken, Stacey, remind us it's primarily geared at the individual faculty level. Is that what we're looking at?
Yep, that's correct. And I will drop the link to the registration page in chat. And feel free to send any questions to me afterwards, and I can forward them on to the great staff at Altmetric.
Yeah, that might be the best way, and then we can actually send you. We can if we can create a video around that and answer how that would work. I think that might be the easiest way, and we'd be happy to do that.
Great.
Well, thanks again, Carola. And
oh, absolutely, my pleasure. Thank you.
And thanks all for coming. Come again to the next and last of our 3-part sessions. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.